were just talking before we got on air about the trips you make to train quarterbacks. So you do how many sessions do you do a week? You think like how many quarterbacks do you take on a week? You said you go from Tampa to Miami to Naples. Like
Yeah,
what's
so
that? Yeah.
if it's a week that I'm going to Naples and Miami, I usually have about 5 kids during the week. I train here in Tampa. I then have another probably like 5 that I'll train in Naples, and then I have 2 college guys, and then a group of about 5 to 6 in Tampa. I mean in Miami. So about
Yeah.
15, 20 kids in total is usually what I'll train whenever I kind of do that loop
Dope.
from Tampa down to Miami and back.
How'd you get into training quarterbacks? Was that just like a natural thing? Obviously, after you played, you just kind of stayed with it, or like how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so my freshman year, obviously when you go to college, you don't really know what you want to be. It's funny, my mom kind of signed me up to be a nurse because she was in nursing school. She was like, "Oh, you should be a nurse anesthetist." So they do like the basically numbing or when people like pass out, so you don't feel pain before your surgery. That's the nurses kind of come in like weigh you and give you that needle. And so she wanted me to get into that, and I was like, "No, I don't really want to."
Yeah.
And my quarterback coach James Cole at the time kind of knew about that. I was like, "Hey, I don't know what I want to get into. Do you know some good majors?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know any, obviously, because he's a quarterback coach." And he was like, "But what I can tell you is if you ever want to get into coaching, please call me. I would love to, help you out with that side."
Yo,
So from really from then, especially when I became the starter, I
yo,
worked a lot with like Nkosi Perry, Jaron Williams. I
yep.
helped them do film study. I helped them, with any tips and tricks that I found out. And then obviously after I was done playing, I spent a year on staff with Miami and Manny Diaz, but I was more of a recruiter. And then I went to Georgia and I was kind of in the same role. But at least in that role, I was at least able to be in like, the film room. I was able to help
Yo.
Todd Hartley. So Todd Hartley was a tight ends coach in Miami that moved to Georgia. So I was able to be in the kind of room with him and he let me say, "Hey, put together this, install." So now I was able to do more of the coaching aspect. And honestly, I really liked it. There's a lot of stuff that I learned. But to be honest with you, the biggest thing was that a lot of guys know X's and O's in college football. So there's a ton of guys that are smart, that understand, hey, cover 2, how do you beat it? 2-man, Tampa 2, 3, 1 rat. Any of the coverage, they were great at scheming. But if a kid had an issue, it was like, hey, throw a better ball. Or it was,
Yeah.
hey, just put the ball in front of him. It wasn't like, no, turn your feet, make sure your ankle is set in front, or hey,
Yeah.
the reason why you're missing high and to the right is because you're not focused on extension. The ball is leaving, up here instead of out front off your nose. So that was stuff that, now that I'm out of kind of the college football world, and I spent a lot of times with David Morris. So David Morris is the founder of Quarterback Country. He trained me whenever I was in high school. Is actually one reason why I found James Coley. So when I got out of kind of college, I was like, I do want to train kids in Florida. I feel like Florida is a very untapped state when it comes to quarterbacks. I feel like nowadays, especially when you look at the way the game has changed, they're looking for athletic guys. So like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, guys that can move but also throw. When you're talking about a state that just, breeds talent, Florida's the
Yeah.
best. So I'm thinking, okay, I get a kid that's talented. Obviously, I know X's and O's. I teach them fundamentals. Now you have, a very good college or even NFL quarterback. So that's what made me move here. And as I was kind of going through it, I was talking to some college guys and that were kind of in. I was like, hey, I think I should go by myself. Or, I trained with Quarterback Country. What is your guys' thought on QB Country? And all the coaches, like I love them. I love the way that you guys, do the process between college and NFL. I love a lot of ways that they train. So I reached out and I was like, hey, do you have anyone that, run the state of Florida for you? He was like, no, unfortunately, there was a guy named Charlie that was running Central Florida and he passed away.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, if you want, the state of Florida is open. We'd love for you to kind of, run QB Country Florida. So long story short, I kind of took over. At first, I was in Orlando. Now I'm in Tampa. And kind of like I said, I usually go from Tampa down to Miami. And on my way back, I'll loop in through Naples and train some kids there. So I really enjoy it. It is definitely one of my passions. I feel like obviously I can't play anymore. I probably could, but I don't really want to play anymore. But I definitely love being on the field. One of my big things, I love seeing people grow. I love seeing things click for guys when they've struggled at one area and then one day all of a sudden it just clicks. A lot of times when they get older, but it is cool to kind of see that process of seeing kids getting better and better. So I really enjoy it. It's one reason why, I didn't want to give up coaching. I kind of moved to private coaching instead of kind of staying in the college world.
Yeah, well, Malik, let me introduce you to everyone real quick. For those that know, we got Malik Rosier, former starting quarterback for the University of Miami. He's hopping on. We're going to talk quarterbacks, talk Cam Ward, and just kind of make it a quarterback show. But like always, like, share, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff. If you are a quarterback head and you enjoy that type of niche stuff, and Malik, it's interesting. You talked about going from the X's and O's and coaching in college to now more of like the fundamentals, the biomechanics, the technique of throwing. Do you ever miss the college coaching? Will you ever, think you ever consider going back, or do you think like the more private quarterback coaching world is more your forte?
Yeah, I've honestly been back and forth. Or I'd say the last couple of years I've had one or two coaching opportunities in college. And half of it is, to be honest with you, I really don't like the way the recruiting department is kind of ran. And not saying for most, but it's more like I feel like some kids will commit to a school based on, oh, this school has a better facility or they have X, Y, and Z. It's something that is external instead of being like, I love the coaches. I love the way you guys work. I love the mindset you guys teach us. And I don't know if you heard what Dan Lanning said, but it's not really about what it's about who you can get on campus. What kid can you commit? Can you give me a 5-star quarterback? Can you give me a 4-star receiver? And that's really what I learned early. So my biggest thing is that I wanted to learn as much as I can about quarterbacks, fundamentals, and kind of what we talked about earlier. There's going to be Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, and Luke Nichols by the next year that I'll be working with all those guys. All those guys are quarterback country guys. And one of my biggest things is, showing guys that, hey, I can develop, a quarterback and take him from, obviously high school to college. But good news is about these guys, obviously they came from other states. So we do teach the same fundamentals across the board. But obviously, going from high school to college is a big jump. So that's kind of where, I want to show people that, hey, like I can still help these guys, develop even as a college quarterback. And then whatever happens after that happens. But for now, I do like it. One of the big, to me, negatives of being a college coach is the travel. For me, like I'd want to stay in Florida. I wouldn't want to go, hey, I'm at South Florida for a year. And then they're like, okay, you're the, quality control guy. And then I get offered from, let's say North Carolina State to be like the quarterbacks coach when I'm there. And then I'm there for 2 years. And then it's okay. I'm getting offered by Arizona to be the quarterback coach. Now I'm in Arizona for 2 years. And I've seen a lot of that, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's very hard to have a stable family. I very much want to be, in my kid's life. And I've just seen times to where, guys are really flying out to go watch another high school recruit when their son's playing, 2 miles down the street. That's just stuff. It's like, do I really want to give that up? Is coaching, especially college coaches, is it that much to where, I'm willing to give up my future kids, lives on like the weekends and things of that nature. So that's a lot of the pros and cons, at least what weigh in my mind. But I definitely think at some point I might dip my feet into it. But at least for now, I at least want to stick to the private coaching.
Yeah. Malik, like you said, your options are open. You're staying with you're training some high level quarterbacks, and QB Country, they do such a great job. They prep guys for the combine, and you mentioned that you worked with them. They just train so many good elite level guys, and they always do a great job. And you mentioned, we talked about the biomechanics, the X's and O's, and obviously you watch a lot of film when you are a college coach. What about like coaching the high school kids? Just out of curiosity, obviously it's a lot of stuff on the field, biomechanics. Do y'all ever watch film together, or will they send you film of like their high school stuff so you kind of have an idea? How does that process like work with you and QB Country?
So for me, it's a combination of both. So what I really like to do, to be honest with you, is I'll kind of say, okay, first we're going to watch your throwing mechanics. So, obviously when they throw with me, we'll go on my phone, we'll kind of watch it. Once they get a good understanding, okay, this is what I'm doing right, doing wrong, then we kind of switch over, okay, instead of watching your film, now we're going to watch college film. The big thing is I feel like if I can teach you college coverages, high school coverages should come very easy. So I like teaching them the very base. Hey, this is 3, this is 2. Teach them the real form of quarters. I know a lot of people see the Madden form and it's like 4 guys going deep. Nope, that's not how quarters is ran in college. And then teaching them under, over, odd front. So once we get into that and they can kind of see it from a college level, then we go down and we say, okay, now let's watch your film. And now let's see how much easier it is watching your film instead of watching, Miami versus North Carolina or Ohio State versus, Michigan. Again, the good news is a lot of those schools do say very simple. It's a lot of, cover 1, cover 2, 2-man. But the biggest thing that like I try to teach my guys is down and distance, because that's where a lot of times, especially guys that are smart, they're like, oh, okay, it's 1 rat. Okay, it's cover 2. Okay, it's quarters. And then the third down is where it gets very unique in college. And that's why I say that this is where a lot of defensive coordinators make their money. They'll give you first and second down, but 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, they're going to stop you. And this is how they do it. So that's kind of where I say this is where, watching a lot of film, this is where you guys got to understand what to actually watch, and understand this is where teams get creative, is more on 3rd down, 3rd and long, things of those nature. So really try and teach them that side. And then from there, at least when it comes to like my college kids, if I do have guys in college, because at one point I was working with TVD and I'm going to work some with Emory, is I don't really go over, hey, what's your progression? I might ask them, hey, on this play, like, where are you supposed to start? And that's more for me to understand where their feet should be aligned. Hey, if your first progression to the left, well, now your feet should be aligned to left. I'm not going to tell you whether you're right or wrong. That's your coach's job to do. But then we go over more pure fundamentals instead of me getting to kind of, hey, this is why shallow or this is mesh, because by the time they get to college, they should learn that. And that should be more on their college coach to kind of teach them that. I will give them tips saying, hey, if this covers is quarters, just know you possibly could hit a post, because with the play action, it'll get that safety down. But I don't necessarily try to teach them progression reads or anything of that nature when they get to college.
You mentioned the how the college coaches would give you first and second down, then third down is kind of where they make their money. So I played very small college football. I was not very successful. My only touchdown was to the other team, if that gives you any idea of how good I was. But my biggest thing was going from like pre-snap to post-snap. Like college coaches are so good showing something pre-snap, then post-snap happens. And you're like, oh, what the hell is going on? So how's that progression like? They may have one up top safety, and then when you hike the ball, you got three high, right? Or vice versa. So like how you go through that and coaching and progress, and maybe even talk about some of your own time when you played, of like how you had to kind of navigate the world of these defensive coordinators, like showing one thing pre-snap and then post-snap being something totally different. Is that like film watching? Like, okay, we see that a lot of times they show one high, but ends up being covered 50% of the time. So we know opportunity could happen. Like, can you maybe explain that process? Does that make a little bit of sense? That question?
It does. So really there's two. I think one, it definitely does start with your ability to understand what is the defensive coordinator's tendency. So for the most part, if they're a cover one team, like I always knew when we play Florida State, they're a cover one man team. They're going to play one rat. They very rarely will play you in zones. When you see one high, it's going to be one high zone. When we played Georgia Tech, they were more of a spot dropping cover three team. So they would sometimes go to cover one man, and you'd be able to tell because the corners would be pressed. But for the most part, they were spot droppers. It was cover three. So I think that's the first thing you got to identify is the DC a man or a zone type of defensive coordinator? They'll tell you that very fast. Okay. Now, secondly, the next thing that I've been big on is something that's, to be honest with you, Mark Ricketts helped me out with a ton, is there's two people, really two groups that really give it away. So the first group is your outside linebackers. For the most part, especially unless you're playing a team that has more of a nickel guy. But when you talk about pure linebackers, for the most part, if it's a single high, especially if you're thinking 2x2, they should be slightly outside of your slots because they know, hey, I have the flat. So even though they can start off in the two out the safeties, if the outside linebackers are slightly outside of those guys, that should let you know, hey, they do not want these guys to release and get outside them, which means they should have the flats. So then that's kind of where it says, okay, can they rotate? If not, the only other coverage they do stay in that type of two high look should be some type of quarters, okay? That's kind of what the only thing they can do is play some type of quarters off that. Now, vice versa, even if they do show you kind of that staggered look, but now you see your corners are down and your linebackers are inside of them, why would they be inside of the slot guys? It's probably because they know the corners on the outside have the flats they don't have to necessarily worry about. So number one, we start the linebackers. Then secondly, again, you kind of talked about they can start one way, they can rock and roll, they can move. The guy that I always liked to find was the strong safety, okay? Most time the field safety, that guy's a little more agile. He can move a little bit. Most time for your strong safety, those are your box guys. Those are the guys that are probably not as good in coverage. We talk about roaming and getting sideline to sideline. So usually those are guys that are going to rotate down. Those are the guys that are really going to tell you kind of what's going on. So again, this is where you got to kind of watch. If it starts too high, for the most part, if he stays on the hash, it's probably quarters. If he gets off the hash to the sideline, it's probably some type of two or corner fire. And the last thing is obviously if you rotate to the middle of the field, then there's your single high. So once you figure out your linebackers, my biggest thing is it's kind of like taking a test. I don't. Not every question am I going to know every answer, but if it has A, B, C, and D, and I can cut off A and D and just be down to B and C, it makes my thought process that much faster. So that's kind of where I teach kids. You're not going to be right. Pre-snap, I don't expect you to be right, but I expect you to start eliminating stuff. Hey, are guys stacked on top of each other? Okay, and if they're not, you can probably take away a blitz. So that kind of thought process pre-snap, so as the post-snap happens, you're either going A or B. It's not A, B, C, or D. It kind of eliminates those thought process. It allows people to think faster because they're thinking about less technically.
Man, that's great. Like that's great insight, and it gives the insight of like how a quarterback processes information. I think the analogy of like, hey, we don't have to know the coverage, but we know it's not C or D. Like that right there is great, and I think
it's huge. And again, like I tell my kids all the time, like you got to be fast. Like I got a lot of kids like, oh, it's cover two, and then they play. It's like no, it's three. I'm like, no, stay two. Nope, roll to three. That's how fast it should be. It should be two, roll to three, two, stay two, went to quarters. Like your brain has to move like that, especially when you're talking about 1 minute drives when you're getting the calls like that. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where I really try to push kids. It's not about being perfect. It's about eliminating stuff and then basically reading what the defense does because they're going to have to get to their spots. And you got to know, hey, off the guys that I've read, what spot is he getting to? And for the most part, the strong safety for me really has helped me understand coverage, because he's the guy that I feel out of the two safeties. One, he's closer, but he's usually going to have to roll down and get off the hash, and he'll kind of dictate coverage based on that.
So you're mainly looking at obviously the whole field, but strong safeties, and you said outside linebackers can kind of give away what potentially
Their
can happen,
leverage.
or
Yeah.
yeah.
And I would say you see it a lot easier when teams are more in spread. So like when the receivers are more, especially the slot guys, are on or near the hash, whenever you get into like those condensed formation, those bunch formations, because it's easier to disguise, it makes it harder. But the more you spread people out, now the more, okay, like if this guy, you know, if I know I have the flats, it's cover 3 and I'm the outside linebacker, especially when you played us, we threw bubbles a lot. So if you were inside leverage, I was catching, I was ripping it, saying, hey, you know, it's a foot race between this linebacker and Braxton Berrios or Jeff Thomas to the sideline. And so that's where the linebackers, even though they would show too high, linebackers are outside, because it's like, hey, even though we want to disguise some, I can't let them just take this bubble. And so that's kind of where it really helped me out on understanding why is that guy lined up outside, even though they're showing too high. I know that right now, if he runs a slant and cover 2, that linebacker's in the wrong. So something's off. And usually after post snap, the safeties rotate and it kind of evens everything out.
Man, well, like you had such a great breakdown. I want to transition a little bit over Cam Ward and the film breakdown, and it makes sense now hearing you talk and explain it, and then hearing kind of your breakdown of Cam Ward. I think things kind of make sense. And I want to dive into it because you have like a pros list and a cons list of Cam Ward. And I'll link that video below in the description. So anyone that wants to go check out Malik's film breakdown of Cam, like go check it out. It's awesome. But you got pros list, and a cons list. Before we get to those lists, if you had like, what's one big broad takeaway you get from like watching Cam? Like for me, for example, I'm not gonna be able to dive into the X's and O's and the weeds like you, but if I can look at it from like a broad perspective, I think like he's improved each year. Like last year, he took a step from 2022. All his numbers are up, and so now I would imagine, and you would hope, if you're a Miami fan, going to Miami with better talent around you, that he can continue to take that step. But when you're watching the film, like what's the one just big takeaway that like if you had like 3 or 4 sentences to give about Cam Ward that you would give to like an average football watcher?
Yeah, I would say the ability to move the pocket. I think whenever you watch Patrick Mahomes and you think about him, obviously he's great in the pocket, but when he's moving around, he's making guys miss, and he's, you know, throwing on the run, especially when it's like real short breaks. That's what makes him different. That's the same thing you see with Cam Ward. Cam Ward at Washington State did not have the best offensive line, so you know he had to make guys move. There are guys that try to do that, and they're very stiff. To me, it's almost like when you see a running back do a spin move. Like I remember watching Eddie Lacy from Alabama, prettiest spin move, and you can tell that was just instincts, that was natural. It's the same way Cam Ward is kind of in the pocket. It's very instinctual, it's very natural, it's not forced. And to me, that's something that is very hard to replicate. It's very hard to create instincts in the pocket. It's something that you see coaches all the time working bag drills with dummies and people moving around. So guys get used to, you know, moving bodies and keeping their eyes downfield, making the throw. And you see Cam do that time and time again, whether he's moving left, right, back, forward, making guys miss in the pocket. It's something as playing quarterback. Whenever you see a guy that can do that at that high of a level, you definitely tip your cap to him.
And another pro that you mentioned about Cam Ward on film was he's got a quick release and he takes underneath. And later on in the film, I won't give it too much away, but you talk about, I forget who they were playing, but like he did the same pass a few times in a row. And it was like, hey, just keep taking it until the defense takes it away. Like your exact quote was like, until they stop it, keep doing it. Take what the defense gives you. Can you maybe talk about like the importance of just taking the simple things as a quarterback and that leading to like the sexier plays essentially? Because I think it was shortly after that there was a big play in the game, but it was like a few kind of quick throws after another. I forget the game it was. You probably remember what I'm talking about. But you talk about just the importance of taking what the defense gives you. If the defense isn't going to stop it, like just keep taking it. We don't have to change up a play to change up a play.
Yeah, you know, again, a lot of cap tipped off to Rick. Rick, and he even kind of put in Georgia Tech's mindset. I don't know if you ever watched Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was satisfied with a 3-yard run. I never got it. But now that I'm in the coaching standpoint, especially when you look at the analytics, when it's 4th and 1 to 2, especially when you have a good offensive line and good players around you, the odds of you actually going for it goes up. The biggest thing is you see a lot of guys, they get greedy. A lot of guys are able to, you know, and I was one of, you know, I hit a slant, cool. I hit a slant again, cool. Now, you know, I've hit 2 or 3 slants. I want to go deep. I want to take my shot.
Yeah.
And I think Cam Ward is someone that plays kind of the long game. I feel like guys that understand football and have been football for a long time, like think about Tom Brady, think about Patrick Mahomes. It didn't matter how the game started. It mattered who was getting the ball last and could you stop him when he got the ball last. And that's, to me, kind of the same mindset that Cam has is, hey, I'm not in a rush. I know I can score. I know I will score. The biggest thing I don't want to do is I don't want to give them plays. I want to make them beat me. There's a lot of teams, especially when you go back and look at it, most teams make enough mistakes, whether it's holding calls, whether
I got you now, dude. We were just kind of talking about like the importance of like taking what the defense gives you and Cam Ward kind of driving down. Yeah.
So taking what the defense gives you, it was one of the biggest thing that, Rick really taught me. Again, especially the way they recruited, they knew, especially in the SEC, if we could get to the fourth quarter in the game, be close, for the most part, we know that we're mentally tougher, we're stronger, we're faster, that we'll win the game. So that was a lot of stuff that Rick was really trying to instill in me and saying, hey, take what they give you. And, we'd watch games, like we'd watch, Brad Kyle, we'd watch old games, we'd watch even some games when he was at Georgia, especially when he first came here. We didn't have any clips of us at Miami running his playbook. We'd have Georgia film. So he'd show us Georgia games. And he was like, the games that we lost, it wasn't because of, the defense making a play. Now, yes, every once in a while, when you're playing, Alabama and the LSUs, there's going to be guys that make plays. But you'd see, like, the guy didn't take the hitch. The guy didn't take the simple check down. The guy didn't, check to, the run play. He wanted to stay in the pass and try to make a play. That was more when they were losing. I think that's one thing that you see in Cam is that he's very comfortable. If you're going to give him a hitch route, he's going to take it. He'll take it again. If you give him a flat route, he's going to take it. And I think it really helps him, especially when he's going to play with the kind of players that Miami has obviously been recruiting. You've seen that, we've had 2 top 10 recruiting classes, so there's talent on campus. Now the big thing is kind of like being a point guard, just getting the ball in their hands, letting them make plays. And so I think that's what he does best. Obviously, he has a ton of arm talent. But to me, I think especially when you talk about older guys that, are trying to get to the NFL, the biggest thing that they want to show is, let me show the deep ball. Let me show me, running around making this Houdini type play. But at the end of the day, like that does happen in the NFL, but more consistently, you're going to hit your slants, your hitches, your intermediate routes. And I think that's one thing that Cam at least excels at. He doesn't get tired of taking it. And at least as someone that understands how the game is played, you at least really appreciate that from him.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. What's like one improvement area of Cam Ward? Whether you mentioned like you had your pro list and cons list. It can be something as simple as like new teammates, has to adjust to your teammates, has to get in the same page as your receivers. It takes time to develop. What's one area you're looking for improvement, whether it's on the film or just like what's the adjustment period like when you're transitioning to a whole new city, team, staff, receivers, etc.?
Yeah, so I would say definitely one is understanding who his receivers are. There's going to be different guys that are fast, different guys that are slow. Everyone's going to run their routes slightly differently. Everyone's going to have a little different break when they come out. So I think that's the first thing he has to do is create instant chemistry. I think that's the one place where they are at a very disadvantage compared to other teams that have quarterbacks. Obviously, I think one thing that also helps us is FSU's been in the same spot, and they've actually shown that, hey, you can take a transfer quarterback and he can be successful. So that's one thing you've at least seen throughout. And so I think it's something that's obviously up to him, the receivers, and the staff to kind of figure out what is everyone comfortable with, because Cam Ward is obviously a lot different than what Tyler Van Dyke was. So understanding, what Cam is good at and understanding what your offense runs and kind of meshing that, I think is going to be the number one most important thing they can do. I think secondly, at least when it comes to him, I think one is going to be him trusting his offensive line. Again, we kind of talked about it, that he didn't have the best offensive line. There's been times we obviously watched last year, Miami, where TBD had 5-6 seconds in the pocket. No one was close to him. He really didn't have to move. And so that's going to be his biggest thing is, hey, when you don't have to, run yourself into pressure, don't. And again, for the most part, he's been very clean. He's only moved when he had to. But now he's going to have a very elite offensive line in front of him. So be able to trust those guys, which I think he will, to me is going to be one of the big things I'm going to look for. And then lastly, and people have always talked about it, is ball security. Not necessarily interceptions, more so whenever he does run, he tends to just hold the ball in the right hand. I will say a ton of guys you should do that, especially when I first got to Miami. It's a big thing. You see a lot of NFL guys that you see, OBJ, Lamar, all those guys running with one hand. The putt one to come say, hey. And it's but get down. Come on, buddy. Get down. No. Come on.
Hey, dogs are always welcome. Dogs are always welcome.
As long as he's welcome. Sometimes they just get a lot. But yeah, you see a lot of guys running with one hand, so guys want to do it until you see defensive linemen knock it out and it's a fumble and it's a scoop and score. So I'll just say, Dawson and them just making him emphasize 2 hands on the ball as he's moving around the pocket. Because obviously you don't want to restrict his movement. I think his ability to run, manipulate the pocket is one thing that makes him, one of the, and so I think that they just have to find a way to say, hey, how can we keep you moving, but make sure that we protect the ball? Because the worst thing that can happen to us, which is what happened to us some last year, was turnovers, especially with the type of offense that we run.
Yeah, I was just touching on with TVD. You mentioned TVD, Todd Van Dyke, former quarterback. And you mentioned Coach Dawson with TVD transferring out. Coach Dawson still there, the offensive coordinator from last year. You got a different quarterback in Cam Ward coming in. So maybe talk about the differences between each quarterback and how Dawson, is transitioning the offense or adjusting the offense to fit Cam Ward compared to TVD skill set, since they had such a different skill set. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think the biggest thing is obviously Dawson's going to have his playbook. He's going to have the plays that he's comfortable calling. I think that's one thing that, especially when Rick came, and I tell my quarterbacks, you have to basically be the basically living impression of your offensive coordinator. You got to know why he's calling calls. You got to know what he's trying to attack. You got to know why he's trying to attack it. I think that's the first thing they got to figure out. And also, especially for Dawson, understanding, hey, what does this guy excel at? I think one thing, again, we kind of watch, he's great at hitches, slants, flats. He does throw a really great deep ball. But I think a lot of teams are going to kind of make him beat him underneath. Again, we watched it last year. There was a lot of 3 rush, drop 8, because a lot of guys couldn't get to Tyler. Like, hey, but just because we can't sack him doesn't mean we can't distract him with coverage. When that happens, you just got to be more patient. You got to find the underneath windows. And so I think that's going to be the biggest adjustment, is saying, hey, based on what we saw last year and how teams adjusted to the offense, obviously Cam is a little different. But again, I think one of the reasons why they adjusted that way was because they couldn't apply pressure without blitzing 5 to 6. And so I think that's something that he's going to see. I can't remember who we played last year. I'm pretty sure it was a Big Ten team. Maybe it was Wisconsin last year, but okay. Oregon played a Big Ten team, and I'm pretty sure it was Wisconsin. They did 3 down rushing with drop 8, and he did very well versus them. So that was one thing that I at least wanted to see. When you watched him again, he did take his shots, but a lot of stuff was underneath, intermediate. And I think that's the big adjustment. Hey, what plays in our playbook can beat this? Because I doubt that a lot of defensive coordinators, at least at the beginning, kind of don't show that, especially when you saw how effective it was towards the end of the years, causing problems with our offense and our quarterback. And so I think that's going to be the first thing. And then really, I think one way you can really help us is adding, and I don't want to be frequently, but I think on third downs and especially in the red zone, some type of quarterback run. I watched him some. He is very elusive in the red zone. He did have some rushing touchdowns last year. And I think that's one element that can really help us, especially sometimes when teams run the perfect coverage for that play. That's kind of where your quarterback has to bail you out with his legs. And I think Cam does a great job of that. And I think finding creative ways, whether it's going empty and motioning guys or different things like that. I'm pretty sure I saw a time when they had 2 quarterbacks in at one time, when Cam played the running back and the quarterback handed off to Cam and Cam threw it back to the quarterback. So I've seen some very creative things they've done with him because he's mobile. And it's like kind of using it. Obviously, he is our quarterback, so don't get him hurt. Don't put him in a situation where he's playing receiver trying to catch a screen, but find ways to kind of use his legs to kind of, make defensive coordinators think in different ways. So I think it's a combination of those two, is figuring out what he's comfortable with and how can we be creative with him in the run game.
Yeah. So last year going into the season, I know you've been so gracious with your time, Malik. I'm gonna get you out of here soon. But last year going into the season, the top 2 quarterbacks were Drake May, Caleb Williams. Like that was set. And then we had the Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Like you had another good tier. This year it's a little bit different. There's no set top quarterback. Mm-hmm. People talk about Carson Beck, Cam Ward. They throw in Quinn Ewers, Cam Ward being one of the top, if not the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal. But there's just not a set this guy. These are for sure top 2 or 3 guys. What do you think Cam Ward's ceiling is? Can he be the top quarterback in 2024, you think? Or what needs to happen for him to be the number 1, 2, or top 3 guy in all of college football? Is it coming up big against the big opponents? Is it the offense clicking? So 2-part question. 1, do you think he can be the best quarterback in college football? And 2, what would it take for him to be in the top 2, 3 kind of rankings in college football?
Yeah. So 1, I think whenever you talk about ability, experience, and players around him, I definitely think he does have the ability to be the best quarterback. I mean, Xavier Restrepo or Kobe George are great. I do hope that this year we can keep Arroyo healthy. I think that adding, a tight end pass game will definitely help. But I mean, he has everything that he needs. He has plenty of experience to kind of know how to get himself out of situations and when to take his chances and not. So when it comes to that standpoint, yeah, I think he, can be the best quarterback. For him to go first round, I think it does have to be a combination of his gameplay. I think it has to be games where he basically has to, kind of take teams on his back and say, hey, I can carry this team to victory. But I also think it's about how far in the playoffs can he go. Again, I think that's one thing that really, really helped JJ McCarthy. To me, I think JJ can be a really, really good NFL quarterback. But there's nothing about him that is like overly wow. Like even when you watch him in the national championship, he really didn't have to throw the ball. They ran the ball so dominantly that like he was basically non-existent. And so that's kind of where it's like when you play on a winning team, when guys understand that, hey, you turned the locker room around and went from wherever you were to actually winning, whether it's, the ACC championship or the college football playoffs or somewhere along that, like that's kind of the next step, especially when you're talking about being a franchise guy. I know to me, Caleb Williams is an exception, but again, he won the Heisman. He already proved that he could be the best player.
Right.
And I think that's where Cam has shown, hey, not only can I be, the best quarterback, but also I can win. I can be an organizational guy. I can be the face of your program. And the NFL, what they care more about than stats is getting W's. That's kind of where it's to show it at Miami. Hey, Miami has a talent. Obviously, we have a lot of, explosive offensive guys. And so it's about putting those guys to use and showing, hey, that I can put up points and win games for you.
Yeah, man, that's a great point, Malik, about if Cam comes in and takes Miami to ACC championship, college football playoff berth, and just like turns him around, he's going to get a lot of credit.
And again, it's a big city. So like you're talking about a guy, you're talking about a city that, to be honest with you, I mean, I guess I won, but I didn't do ACC championship. I didn't win it. But you're talking about when you win it, the media there, everyone loving you, the hype that's going to be sparked again. Obviously, Miami has a lot of NFL connections because Alonzo just went back to the NFL. There's Thomas Brown that was a running back. There's a lot of guys that still love Miami and definitely keep in tune with what's going on down there. You talk about a kid that could definitely flip that city upside down if he goes up there and wins the ACC championship game. I think that kind of narrative really helps him. We're talking about boosters. One reason too why they draft kids is, can he sell stuff? Can he sell jerseys? Can he sell stock? Can we sell him also to our fan base as well? And I think that's half of it. When you have the city of Miami erupt in your name, there's other fan bases that definitely keep their ear tapped into that city.
Yeah, man, that's such a great point, man. And well, dude, Malik, you've been so just gracious with your time, and we talked about what you're doing, mentoring college and high school quarterbacks and coaching them and training them. We talked about this your past and going from coaching in college, going from playing to coaching to now being a private quarterback coach. Then we talked about Cam Ward, which was awesome. So we kind of just hit on a bunch of different spectrums. So I always like to end the show when I have guests on from former quarterbacks like yourself to coaches. I always like to end it with, what is one piece of advice you would give to younger quarterbacks, a younger 16-year-old Malik, maybe just a younger quarterback in general who's kind of coming up in the ranks and coming up, not in college yet, but it's like on the path for that. What's a piece or two of advice you would pass down along to him?
Perfect. So the two advice I would give to kids. So number one is control what you can control. There's going to be kids and guys around you that get offers in you. There's going to be kids that you think that shouldn't get offers, that you should get the offers that you should. The biggest thing I can say, man, if you put your head down, you focus on how can I get 1% better, whether it's on the film study, weight room, classroom. By the end of the day, when you look back, 2 years later, you're going to be so much further along, and you're probably going to have the offers. You're going to be in the spots that you want to go to. So there's an old saying is, don't fall in love where you're headed. Fall in love with the process. Fall in love with waking up early. Fall in love with watching film. Fall in love with being on the field. Fall in love with being the last person leaving the office. Like, if you fall in love with the process, everything else will kind of take care of itself because you're going to outwork everybody else. And then the last bit of advice that I would really give kids is just really understand that recruiting sometimes is there are guys that get offers that are non-committable. I think that's the one thing that I tell a lot of my kids, okay, yes, there are guys that's going to go on Rivals or go on 24/7, and they're going to have a check beside their name. They're just going to say Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, wherever. And there are kids, especially in my position at quarterback, they have the offers, they go to commit, and the coach says, no, I want to see you finish out this year. I want to see you develop more. I want to see, I saw the last couple of weeks, you struggled some. I want to see, can you get past that? I promise you, I've been places where kids have gotten hurt and they've had the offer, they've called, say, hey, coach, can I commit? No, you cannot commit. And so there's times like that where I tell kids, just put your head down, get better and better each week, because there are guys that have offers that they're not committable offers. And so I tell people all the time, just control what you can control and don't worry about offers until you actually sign the paper, because some of that stuff is definitely verbal offers and not physical offers, which is unfortunate.
No, I hear you. I hear that about that all the time too. It's like, hey, it ain't legit unless you can commit. That's kind of just like
and that's what I tell people, man. Okay, cool, you got an offer. Call Kirby right now and commit to Georgia. Can
Right.
you?
Exactly.
There's a difference. And so that's what I
Yep.
tell a lot of kids, man. Just control what you can control, because to me, honestly, like, I know it's unfortunate, but you'd almost rather have an offer late that is committable than get an offer early that, like, you try to go back on later and can't commit. And a lot of
Yeah.
that, again, is,
No.
you get better each week, or you're the same kid, or honestly, where kids get their offers pulled is they get the offers they want, then they start slowing down and their stats get worse and worse and not getting better and better. So that's why I tell my kids, man, if you put your head down and you work, you're going to outwork a lot of kids, because most guys, when they get the offers, they relax. When I tell my kids, when you get the offers, you go even harder now. So that's a lot of stuff that I really tell the kids.
Man, no, that's great stuff, Malik. Man, well, it's been so fun talking quarterbacks. We got to try to do this again sometime so this isn't too much of a long episode. But Malik, tell
this is fun. I definitely don't mind it. Hopefully next time we do it, my service isn't acting all crazy.
No, we'll definitely do this. Maybe we'll even do like weekly or monthly like Miami quarterback updates or something. That might be cool once the season starts. But can you tell everyone where they can find you, whether it's social media, you do some stuff on YouTube, and maybe kind of what to expect from the channel, more film breakdowns? Just kind of tell us, where we can go and keep up with what you're doing.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. So one, if you on YouTube, it's just the Malik Rosier Show. On Twitter, it's just Malik Rosier 12. And then I actually have another business account that I'm doing a lot of stuff with, especially you guys are Miami fans. So some of the fans have probably heard about it, but I got an account called Miami Meals Club. And it's a combination between obviously Miami guys. So like this month, all the way up until March 15th, we have a Sean Taylor jersey that has signatures from myself, John Beeson, Xavier Restrepo, TVD, DJ Ivy, a whole bunch of guys that are playing and have played. And we're giving it up, and basically it's up for donation. And so the highest bidder will get the jersey, and all the funds that we get will actually go to a suicide prevention company or nonprofit that is in Miami. And so they actually focus on South Florida. That's what Xavier Restrepo wanted to do for this month. And so we have the jersey up, and I'm just trying to push awareness saying, hey, if you guys want to sign Sean Taylor jersey and want the funds to go somewhere good, well, here's your opportunity. And so on the Miami Mills Club account, you guys will see there is a jersey that's kind of all the information as well as a GoFundMe where all the funds are going to as well.
Awesome. Well, Malik, after we're done, send that over, and I'll put that link in the description below. So I'm about to end the show. Malik, just give me 1 second. Once we end it, just hang on in the back for me, if you don't mind. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. This is a great episode with Malik giving some insight and then talking about Cam Ward. So if you like this quarterback type of content, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, follow Malik stuff, all the YouTube podcast stuff. I'm supposed to say that. I don't know what to say. Just like and share and subscribe. It helps. And we'll see you next time. Peace.